I grew up hearing tales of haunted places, ghost sightings, and eerie experiences. But of all the stories whispered around campfires or shared in hushed tones at family gatherings, one legend stood out: the White Lady of Balete Drive. As a child, it filled me with a curious mix of dread and fascination. Little did I know that one day I would find myself face to face with that very legend. Balete Drive is an ordinary street by day, nestled in Quezon City. It's lined with trees, quaint houses, and bustling with life. But when night falls, the street transforms into something else entirely. It becomes a long, dark tunnel, draped by the shadows of towering balete trees, their tangled roots creeping like fingers from the earth. There's a stillness, a palpable quiet that settles over the street, as if it's holding its breath, waiting for something or someone. It was on one such night that my story begins. I was driving home from a late night shift at the hospital, mentally exhausted and desperate to crawl into bed. The quickest route to my apartment was through Balete Drive, and although I had driven through it countless times without incident, something about that night felt different. The moon was full, casting an eerie glow over the road, and the trees seemed to sway ominously in the wind, their leaves rustling like whispered warnings. My headlights cut through the darkness, illuminating the narrow, winding street ahead. There were no other cars on the road, and the stillness was unnerving. As I approached the middle stretch of Balete Drive, where the stories of the White Lady often began, I felt a sudden chill, as if the temperature had dropped several degrees. I instinctively reached for the air conditioning dial to adjust it, only to find that it was already off. The hair on the back of my neck prickled. I brushed it off as paranoia. After all, it was just an urban legend. I had nothing to fear, or so I thought. As I rounded a bend, something caught my eye. At first, I thought it was a trick of the light, or a shadow cast by the trees, but as I drew closer, I saw her. Standing on the side of the road, her figure faintly illuminated by my headlights, was a woman dressed in a flowing white gown. Her hair was long and black, cascading down her back like a dark waterfall. She was turned away from me, her face obscured, but something about her presence sent a wave of unease coursing through my veins. My hands tightened on the steering wheel. The rational part of my brain told me to drive past her, that she was just some unfortunate soul stranded on the side of the road, or perhaps a figment of my overworked imagination. But something deeper, something primal, urged me to stop. Against my better judgment, I slowed the car and rolled down the window, leaning out slightly to get a better look. "Miss, do you need help?" I called out, my voice sounding shaky even to my own ears. She didn't respond. She didn't move. Her stillness was unnerving, and I felt a growing sense of dread. I repeated the question, louder this time, but still, there was no reply. For a moment, I considered driving away, leaving her behind, but I couldn't shake the feeling that something was terribly wrong. I thought of the stories I had heard as a child, tales of drivers picking up the White Lady only to have her disappear from the back seat or suddenly appear in the rearview mirror, her face a twisted mask of rage and sorrow. My pulse quickened, and I shifted the car into gear, ready to leave, when something happened that made my blood run cold. Slowly, almost painfully so, the woman began to turn. I felt the breath catch in my throat as her face came into view. Her skin was pale, almost translucent, and her eyes, wide, unblinking, were hollow, dark pits. But what truly horrified me was her mouth. It was twisted into a grotesque smile, her lips cracked and bleeding as if she had been biting them in frustration or agony. There was something so deeply wrong about her expression, something that sent a wave of terror through my body. I slammed my foot on the accelerator, my tires screeching as the car lurched forward. My heart was pounding in my chest, and I could feel the panic rising in my throat. I kept my eyes on the road ahead, refusing to glance in the rearview mirror, even though every instinct screamed at me to check if she was following me. The stories always said she would appear in the back seat. The car sped down Balete Drive, the trees blurring into dark shapes on either side. My mind raced as I tried to make sense of what I had just seen. Could it really have been her? Was it truly the white lady? Suddenly, without warning, the car's engine sputtered. The dashboard lights flickered, and before I could react, the car stalled, coming to a jerky halt in the middle of the road. I frantically turned the key in the ignition, but the engine refused to start. My breath came in shallow gasps as I realized where I was, stranded on Balete Drive, alone, with the white lady nearby. I glanced in the rearview mirror, and my blood ran cold. She was there, sitting in the back seat, her face inches from mine. Her hollow eyes locked onto me, and that same twisted smile stretched across her face. She said nothing, but I could feel her presence, oppressive and suffocating. Terror seized me. I scrambled to unlock the car door, my fingers shaking as I fumbled with the handle. I needed to get out, to run, to escape. But no matter how hard I tried, the door wouldn't budge. It was as if the car itself had trapped me in, forcing me to face her. I squeezed my eyes shut, refusing to look at her any longer, my body trembling with fear. In my mind, I begged her to go away, to leave me alone. Seconds felt like hours as I sat there, paralyzed, waiting for something, anything, to happen. And then, just as suddenly as she had appeared, she was gone. I opened my eyes, cautiously glancing in the rearview mirror. The back seat was empty. My heart was still pounding, and my hands were slick with sweat as I tried the ignition again. This time, the car started without issue. I floored the accelerator and sped down the road, not daring to look back. When I finally reached home, I bolted inside, locking the door behind me and collapsing onto the floor in a trembling heap. The events of the night played over and over in my mind, but no matter how hard I tried to rationalize it, I knew what I had seen. The white lady of Balete Drive was real. In the days that followed, I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being watched. Every time I glanced in a mirror or caught a glimpse of my reflection in a window, I half expected to see her standing behind me, her hollow eyes staring back. Sleep became elusive, and the nightmares, oh, the nightmares, were relentless. In every dream, she was there, always waiting, always watching. It's been years since that night, but the memory of her face still haunts me. I avoid Balete Drive at all costs, and I've made a habit of never looking in the rearview mirror at night. Because once you've seen her, once the white lady has marked you, you never know when she'll return.